Parenting Desire, a podcast series on how to circumvent desire rivaling by Nicholas Sakellariou. Episode 2, Placing My Fear. What if desire, previously interpreted sensationally to indicate a passion contradicting an insight, parochially made sense no more? What if sense-making, proximately regarded an instrument bringing physical reference to those in search for insight confirming belief, brought a remark no less? By God, as a result of both remarking an outcome of search and interpreting longing in favor of seeing with one's eyes, comes a sense of having guilt for feeling passionate. Contriving to learn beyond blaming crave for what it dictates, you justify a canon in approaching belief like praise of the senses. I am talking about belief to describe an approach to certainty with reference to indulging whatever desire. In addition, the priority indicated by believing is exactly what desire rivaling will show. No one sound may feel prioritizing where there is someone confusing a desire as directing attention to places where learning is about what one can read. In exaggerating desire intolerance, behavioral moderation lessens impulse personal blaming to whoever attends satisfaction about body seduction. In theory, prioritizing sensational abstinence bypasses enduring confusion. In practice, undoing the temporary esoteric intolerance is setting the perpetual tribute to exchange parochial literature with evidence observing. Welcome back to school, parents of desire. After being so invited to exchange your whatever theory of parenting with learning in practice about approaching desire as a compelling statement to be praised, you learn to progressively eradicate the connection you create with your personal environment. This is not the ability to care about others or the passion one has about a way of being, but the sentimental prison one puts themselves into by condoning to societal measures of caliber. In exchange for pleasing others' views to satisfy whatever opinion, the listener was shown their desire is a telling indication there must be a measurable, sensible, that is, method to know what to prioritize. I, for good reason, then spoke about documenting anybody's desire rivaling, a term encompassing juxtaposition between what they want and what they spend many trials antagonizing. Parochialism is the term I chose consciously due to its religious connotations to address such antagonizing effect. A resentment that arises privately from condoning to behavioral theories about what is expected from you, all the while recognizing perpetual instability and discomfort ruining your daily enthusiasm about life, promoting fear as its travesty. Parenting a desire means a theory has no place in autonomous acknowledgement of exhibiting care for oneself. In forcing someone to retire from their orientation, despite the detrimental blame that insinuates from negating one's pronouncement, insofar as they inhibit, rather than promoting beliefs, systematic behavioral deontologies are seldom contriving to parenting, while they are notorious for catering someone who is blaming themselves. Learning, it is becoming transparent to those who correspond freely to my aforementioned sincere verification of desire rivaling, does not occur through the pages of a book, but through the annotations that one writes by attending a theatrical script they have themselves composed. As far as the whatever behavioral theory's messaging to legitimacy, trumpeted as compound system, praising that it focuses not on a compartment but the entirety of someone's presence, proponents barely touch on the question. Why does oppression of the excitement that one experiences cause their body to feel pain? Yet, that which is the primordial cause of apprehension an unmet desire, the body detects immediately. A miserable rather than a resolute being is the embodiment of negating anybody attendance of a crave. Basically, my approach to conducting self-care diminishes the need to severing a pleasure insofar as there is instruction to distinguish between those desire attendances which prioritize a state of assurance and those which do not. Basically attributes to the present, experienced not as a constant of time, but as a courageous decision. The prioritizing method that comprises the direction of my work is sequentially offered in the proximate available to all correspondences. Basically a promotion corresponding a person fully indulging themselves. My approach puts longing not on hold, as theories of caring for being in the present have done, establishing so a constellation of practices promoting upholding of the senses. Think about the following example. Is there any better attendance of one's priorities than pleading to undo what are the conditions that prevent them from exchanging their misery with a celebration of courageous living? The first episode of Parenting Desire detailed the conditions that may apply to whenever you find yourself upholding your ground, whatever your bystanders expect from you. I showed that some of the most prominent ideas about conducting self-care are based upon orientation obscuring views, such as those which portray anything connoting indulgence of the senses as inhibiting the enhancement of self-defense. To avoid extrapolating from these trepidation sentencing ideas that command your personal standing and so forbid reactions to amend your posture, the approach of going back to school proposes you rely not on what somebody tells you is important undoing, all the while it welcomes a singular body to dictate. My suggestion has been to persist caring for you in order to be able to resist others' extrapolations that prolong confusion. In this episode, I follow up on such definition of caring to emphasize that the closest one feels to themselves, the more honestly they can either withdraw from or taste a prospect and vice versa. Reducing the common disappointment stemming from the analogous prospect placement disagreement is what the training of Jesus Does Yoga defines as encouragement. Initially felt as a congestion in the periphery of the heart that condones your excitement, with time, all that excites you transforms into an effort which becomes a reaction to undue desire rivaling. The first episode held a readily assumed position that no longer a desire one has rules out a reaction by them, for every desire deserves to be named. I made the assumption it is only by learning experientially that you undo the difference that lies in believing as a witness versus theorizing as observer of thoughts. This is technically what I meant previously concerning the formal education theories that abound, either from a religious or agnostic perspective. The sooner they encompass their tolerance for having a desire, trainees are finding the courage for standing on their feet. To continue theorizing the absence of desire is to recognize they're being dishonest to themselves. Recognizing that to undo desire rivaling any type of parochialism must be abandoned places you in a private lesson in which you are your own tutor. While not severing my correspondents' desires, I say they stop contemplating formality and undo the contrasting behavior from the one they long to implement. If I were to extend my treatment of desire in one claim, what has been praised is that to embolden your self-care, all desires must be met. To rule out your affiliation with your body would neither facilitate your search for yourself, nor will it expedite your caring for the prospect beholding. Concerning the method presented in Parenting Desire, I am doing what I want suggests an affirmation that before it forms in speech, it passes through the conduit of personal resolve. Passionately composed by you at the theatrical stage of exuberant longing, the praise of desire delivers. I am echoing by collaboration and, at the same time, resonating with my praiseworthy correspondent. What I call Principle 1 of my methodology, a prerequisite to train the 7 techniques, attests to a trainee's appreciation of compliance resistance as volunteering to improve their self-esteem as well as deliberation to condone not anymore. Between a tormented being and a profound sense of accomplishment are found the repeated efforts of dedication in avoiding, by means exclusively self-explanatory, to succumb to tyranny. Readiness, as in the right timing, is the term I used methodically while blending an idiom decreeing both time and calibrated action to refer to such state in the first Parenting Desire episode as well as in my book. The proximate episodes will continue to show that the care given to someone by themselves starts with such effort. I have emphatically and by design prolonged the terminology of figurative as well as somatic pleasure in plenty occasions. By bringing consideration to the current mismatch between their state of being and their prospect, trainees examine an original hypothesis, that of whether they sympathize with themselves or they behave unselfishly. The rest of this episode regards such consideration to be seminal as far as treating your body for the conduit that it represents. In most religious ideas, abstaining from having body-mediated excitement is still viewed as separation from prison living. Therefore, conducting a luscious hypothesis, if not envied, is considered unworthy undertaking, especially for those who sever it, asking from a condescending standpoint that someone exchange how they feel for their pardoning. Instead of a religious pardon, you are offered an invitation to undo your intolerance for others' infatuations, a defying act which restores anybody's passion for invigorating their stamina intoxicated from the personal retaliation they suffered. Exchange self-blaming with readiness to stand your ground in the midst of challenging circumstances. To be accustomed to blame oneself, a common symptom of infatuation, is lame. Being infatuated precedes ignorance of how somebody's connection with their environment creates reduction of readiness because the more you fear, the more undecided you stand. Episode 2 is about that connection we all endorse to varying degrees and how to avoid it. What I would, as an introduction to my book's sequence of self-care provisions, like to do next is deter my correspondent's search for any parenting directions in methods nonsensical. When I condone my sentimental value in the face of a storm, I subject myself to a bereft from a lessened condition, which implies I have nothing ready to juxtapose, resist, that is. Hence, many psychological theories, such as those which prevent their advocates from asking questions of why, instead of addressing restless behavioral symptoms, treat dishonesty and desire attendance as management of instability and discomfort, which causes further dissatisfaction and imprisonment. By placing my fear to the forefront, I prevent such dishonesty about my state of being from leading me to a treacherous mindset. I only accomplish self-care when I make my fear disappear. This is literally what many have sounded when they prompted to fiercely look our fear directly. The Nauli Kriya, as I have named it, is the first out of 7 simple, accessible to all techniques that comprise the methodology of Jesus Does Yoga. I will not give this kriya a complete annotation, for you can read the description yourself in the book. As for the structure of this appending episode, two separate items will be included. First, fear of death is dissolved through the lens of an introduction to meditation for anybody. Second, the point between the eyebrows serves as the turnkey by which the idea that one's personal disbelief is justified because they have not seen with their own eyes opens for examination. A single muscular promotion is enough to make fear management theories sound less about embracing bravery and more about desolation severance. Learning how to undo one's condescending thoughts, that is, to exonerate themselves without approaching their body wholeheartedly, is like attending an art exhibition that does not please the eye. Every time a pleasing prospect surfaces, I juxtapose two epithets: stationary and ferocious. The prospect in which one does not fear I will call ferocious, whereas the state one finds themselves desiring to live ferociously I will call stationary. Throughout my writing, I borrow from a forensic scheme entitled in my previous episode, Blending of Praise and Prose of Desire. Desire rivaling is another example of such blending happening at the core of human anatomy, the heart. The body, as well as the mind, have their corresponding references of intolerance for when the heart does not prioritize indulgence of its own pressing needs. To continue introducing the anatomy readiness correspondence, this podcast will employ such metaphorical sense-making that I used in Jesus Does Yoga, whose purpose, to read a sentence as if it were text describing a biological or etymological state, altogether designates a relationship of symmetry between one's stationary and ferocious presence. To the first parochial idea, which condescendingly appears to their mind to infatuate them with fear, a trainee is ready to contest that sympathy only applies to what they believe is capable to drive their state of being from stationary to ferocious. The trainee does not discern between a contestation produced in their head and another made by their bodies prioritizing reaction. To be in the body means the two words, ferocious and stationary, abound in the compartment of a contestant. In saying, I care for exonerating myself from all which privately consumes, I mean pivoting by my bystander's ideas concerns me not. Parochial ideas, such as indulging excitement as a sign of weakness, beget tribulations, the consequences of which stagnate a contestant's independence, which is the reason they abuse their personal life members as well as lose confidence. Loss of confidence begets fear of death that, apart from exhibiting terrifying symptoms when it compels someone, inhibits the learning of stationary self-induction, making not a resolution of an infatuation, but all personal contestations to be self-blaming. Rather than fearing death, a trainee learns to accentuate their ferociousness. Such training is preparing them to place tyrannical thoughts in optimal resolution, thus converting times of involuntary action into times of independence. While noting the effects of meditation, St. Paul distinguished between two types of death. Verily, he said, I die every night. The use of the term verily, which may seem inconsequential in that sentence, St. Paul intended as provocation to establish a collaboration between the body vessel and the compartment of self-care found at the point where the eyebrows converge. Verily confers a metaphor for diagonally so promoting the eyes, suggesting whoever is infatuated can no longer appreciate excitement in doing what they accustom themselves in. If by custom you understand parochial, then I is assured in the view the eyes commemorate as they die. The collaboration at hand, which in Jesus Does Yoga was entitled an experiment waiting to be conducted, is what happens while the Christ center begins to encompass the body. The first type of death happens when the body ceases to propel blood from the heart to its organs. The second occurs along a similar but metaphorical way as the concentration of the eyes shifts to the sides, hence the heart's pulse, delivering oxygen from the blood, ceases to elevate as much beyond the shoulders. To many of my fellow bystanders who position themselves above their bodies, inasmuch a meditator contests verily, that is, without placing fear at past or future endeavors, the repeated release of stimulants in their frontal lobe resolutes the heart's titular sound, authenticity, so the body is no longer looked down upon. The idea most antithetical to self-care is the parochial term mindfulness. Anticipating to associate contesting serendipitously with calming the mind, contrary to both semantics and the effort to subdue the involuntarily elevated pulse of the heart, a trainee must unmask. Otherwise, they consider caring daunting, lowering instead of praising their appetite to embolden their stance. Notwithstanding an optimal stance, prompted by tolerantly grounding the hips, meditation expedites the traveling of triangularly sentenced stem cells along the spine column. This phenomenon, known by the telling name sedation, is biologically induced by stimulating the eyebrows' convergence solemnly, that is, single-mindedly through concentrating on it. Enigmatic meditation shall no longer be to your self-care the moment your eyes initiate the circle which resembles the syncopated one they create involuntarily, prioritizing your stepping into dance. The 9th chapter of Jesus Does Yoga outlines a primer dedicated to those who care to address bravery not with the intention to rival their bodies, but with the desire to be seen as they are. How is bravery related to meditation? You may therefore ask. The answer, provocative as it sounds to you, lies in placing fear on the convergence of the opposite from parochial standpoint, where it does not compromise the trainee's character. Biologically speaking, fear arises as a result of redundant endorphins misplaced in the brain. Blaming oneself truncates the circulation of endorphins inside the liver as it corrupts greatly the absorption of peptides that are predominantly linear. Such overwhelming corruption is antagonized accordingly. To level the synthesis of peptides, minimizing the cellular geometry of the spine, carrying so a pleonasm of endorphins to the crane. Besides, pronounced physically, any distortion of that sort juxtaposed long enough is documented by volatile stance. To meditate, you neither need stretch your limbs ceremoniously, emulating an ascetic, nor is compromising to not have plenty of time to step into. Instead of counting every exhale down, pragmatically frustrating insofar mesmerizing pleasure is concerned, tying by contradiction yourself in an affidavit tests showing obliviousness of breath. Etymologically speaking, recuperating self-blaming will depend equally on the amount and superficiality of concentration. Postponing sporadically is an indication of lacking stationary reaction, whereas concentrating with tenacity augments your ferociousness. What about second thoughts? An acknowledgement a restless mind stimulates the body. Peculiar lettering in "observe your thoughts" should be treated as distraction. Neither a biological nor an etymological justification for its stance, as there is ambivalence, not pragmatism in correcting "sit with your thoughts." Randomly echoing something from the abyss proves not far-seeing. A combination of tolerant stance with a mind that compassionately disregards parochialism while unapologetically accepts self-tutelage was my axiom. For everyone who holds stale in hearing repeatedly my admonishment, this approach takes resistance embraced seriously. In anticipation of a forecast, it promises that repetition sends them a prism so that they never get lost. Placing my fear presumes courageous, not incapacitated, behavior that stems from undoing passion severance. Key to trespassing someone's fanatical mindset depends on sequencing evidence a trainee must find for themselves. The rapid eye movement, instigated during sleep, reconstructed with meditation, issues the tone of these exciting news. Recovery of behavior impartiality surprises anybody volunteering so long. Trembling, lightheaded strengthens one's confidence. To the command, close your eyes and focus on counting your breath, the trainee can respond, I am losing my religion. To the second care manifesting deliberation, to be impartial to fear, characteristic may be a dialogue anyone has had with themselves. Will I resolute honesty from being vulnerable? Similar resolution was sought after the moment in the chronicle of Jesus' life he met most courageously. Will I undo my fear? Ponders Jesus to the sight of the cross. By then, he contests to himself, my passion to live in the most ferocious way possible is justified fully. Bless the time you, astonished with how invigorated bravery is innovating your self-esteem, are independent, not theoretically but nostalgically recalled to live your life. Succumbing to parochial ideas is truncating your courage acquisition, interrupting your symphony restored only privately and methodically. The time of hesitating to reveal the poetry of desire has ended. In the next episode, I discuss wholeheartedly one liturgy, a technique to expand your heart combined with a story to recall it. Until then, I respect not just the ones who praise their desires, but also the ones who do not.